Today, I'm sitting down and having a conversation with Jeff Epstein, the founder and CEO of OnBoard Software. Jeff and I go way back to our high school days and are close friends. The reason why I asked him to have a conversation was because he has deep experience around affiliate and referral networks. He started a referral software company, Ambassador, back in 2009 and built that over a decade and successfully exited the business. Before that, in university, he built one of the first poker affiliate networks when online poker just started to take off. So he has deep experience both in the digital and physical worlds when it comes to affiliate and referral networks. I hope you enjoy the pod, and remember to go to Rects. All right, here we are. We are with the man, the myth, the legend, everyone, Jeffrey Epstein. Jeff Epstein, the one and only, but not the one that most of you are thinking about. So this is a different one. So Jeff and I are old friends since our days growing up in Detroit. He's a serial entrepreneur in the software space and also active angel investor. And he doesn't do many public appearances, so I'm really excited he agreed to do this with me. But the reason why I wanted to have a conversation with Jeff is he has very deep experience both in the referral and affiliate space, both in the digital and physical worlds. And for those of you who are listening, this is relevant for going direct. It's kind of one of the pillars that I talk about is redefining the wholesale distribution function. And so thinking about how wholesale distribution should really function much more like a network versus a gatekeeper or middleman that keep buyers and sellers disconnected. They should actually facilitate that interaction directly between buyers and sellers. And so, in order for this to happen, something that I've thought a lot about, and we'll get into today, is the sales and distribution function is going to start to merge. And so that the idea being is, can you build like these big decentralized referral networks and just plug them into like automated fulfillment and logistics systems, which is clearly coming. And so that's just kind of intellectually what got me interested. And so I think there's something really interesting to explore. So thanks, my man, for joining and having the conversation.
Yeah, happy to be here. I appreciate it.
Cool. All right. So do you remember what happened in July 2019? A little quiz. Take your time.
July 2019.
Yeah.
I have no idea. So this is, I feel like a setup right here.
Jeffrey Epstein was arrested on sex trafficking charges. So how has your life changed since that day?
Yeah, it's been pretty bad.
Any good anecdotes at all?
Maybe even before that. So in 2019, I actually moved to Manhattan as well. So it was right in the heart of everything. Yeah, it's been, I think every day since someone has said something, a waiter, doc today at the doctor's office, doesn't matter where. Yeah, it's there's been a movement to change my name to JD. My middle name is Douglas. So that movement took hold in the last few months with some of my neighbors as a joke, but then people started taking it seriously. So maybe we'll do that.
All right, I'll go. You're going by JD for the rest of the hour. So, all right, cool. So I want to start here. When did you start playing poker?
The weekend or the few days after I saw Rounders, which was, maybe I think probably sophomore. I could drive. I know I drove to the movies. So let's say like 95, 96, maybe 97. Actually 97, I think that was when Rounders came out. So yeah, so I've been playing poker since like 97, like Texas Hold'em a little bit before that, but really turned it on after seeing Rounders.
And so obviously we used to play poker back in the day a little bit together. You're a much better player than I am. But I know you got involved when you were at Michigan State with online poker, and then that evolved into building a poker affiliate network. So can you just talk a little bit about kind of that experience and what you did with that?
Yeah. So I was a pretty big, pretty big poker player, focused and sort of obsessed with learning the game. And when I was in college at Michigan State, I found a home game of people that were also super obsessed, borderline degenerates, but we played poker at least once a week. And then we started playing online when it became legal to play online. So online poker was sort of rampant, I would say, across college campuses and people our age, like early 20s. Um, and and this amazing thing happened. We realized that like you could refer people to play and you could get like $100. Like it almost didn't seem real. Like this is, again, you get to, for most people have to realize this is like the very early days of connected internet, right? Like we just started having. It was the first year that I had high speed internet, which and like I had a dial up before then, but most people weren't on the web like 24/7, right, on the internet. So um, you could get money for referring someone to play, and they could put in $100, then you'd get $100. It was like sort of mind blowing, like especially as a college kid. That's a ton of money, right? Like, and so we saw that opportunity, and it was sort of amazing. And then the wheel started turning in terms of like what can you do, and actually start referring people and sort of building um, a much bigger community or network of people.
So just so kind of, I'm just breaking it down to basics here. So basically, these online poker sites were saying, "Hey, if you bring us people to play, we'll give you $100."
Right. I mean, it's obvious, right? Like thinking about it today, and it came from what we saw like with the PayPal refer somebody get $5, right? Like it was like this early distribution mechanism, customer acquisition, which as a consumer seemed crazy. Like I was like, wow, I can get $100 for free if my friend deposits 500 and then immediately withdraws 500. Like doesn't make any sense. Like little do we know, or I guess now in hindsight it makes a ton of sense. Like the fact that they signed up and gave their bank information or credit card, it's very likely they're going to lose like infinitely more than the amount that they deposited and even withdrew, right? But at the time, again, this was like very interesting and sort of, I would say, probably very forward thinking, like customer acquisition strategies. And like as the end user, consumer at the time, we were just like it blew our mind. And we're just like, how can we take advantage of this as like a college kid looking for extra money?
So how did it work with you? So you went up and you guys went around and signed up a bunch of, like basically you were just referral partners for a bunch of sites. Is that what it was? And then you just got a percentage of that?
Yeah. So what we did was in poker it was interesting because in other places, right? Like there's a referral and you just get a commission, right? Essentially, like you refer somebody and you get money. But with poker sites, they did something interesting, and they basically determined how much your worth as a player was based on what they call the rake. Okay, so this is like a sort of an interesting concept, but I think it can be applicable in other areas. So the more that you played, the more that you were worth, right? Even though in poker it's sort of a zero sum game, you're taking money from other people. Every pot, the house, the casino, the website takes like let's say $1 or $2 out of the pot, right? And that's free money for them. And so if I play in 10 hands and they take out $10, they'll say Jeff's worth $1, hypothetically, right? And so what we did with and what became popular in online poker was this concept of rake back. So they would give the affiliates a percentage of a rake of all their players, meaning you don't only have an incentive to bring new customers, you have an incentive to bring new customers that play a lot, right? Because that keeps the games active, it keeps them making more money, it keeps more tables open. And so we did this thing. Again, it wasn't us. We didn't come up with this concept of rakeback, but what people did was they gave rakeback to large players online. And so myself and many of my friends that I played with were heavy online players, and they would receive thousands of dollars in rakeback every month just for playing. It didn't matter whether you won or lost. You got the rakeback regardless. It was based on how much time you actually spent. And so when we started doing the math, we realized, hey, if we start our own company, we can actually give a lot more rake back to ourselves. That was how it started. We can actually make way more money because these affiliates are sort of taking some of our profit, so to speak. And so that's how the idea started in my head was my friends were telling me how much they were receiving. And I was like, whoa, if we just do this ourselves, that's extra thousands of dollars for you per month. I'll do all the work, let's split it or something. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. And so that's how it started.
Okay, so if I am just sort of, I want to, because it's like a very interesting, because it's like such an early example, like you were saying, of like an affiliate referral network. So the mechanics, just to make sure the audience understands, if I was a poker player you were coming to me and saying, "Hey, sign up with Jeff and Co. His
Right.
affiliate network," and then I had my own percentage with you because I
Right.
had no interaction with the actual online site. Is that what it
Exactly.
was?
Yep.
Okay, got it. And then you just gave your the poker players better economics because there was so much money in there.
Exactly. And then it became
Okay.
sort of a service business too. Like, what could we do? Like, so we'd give them money early. Like, we had stats on how much they were going to get. We would pay them a week early, or we would pay that because we knew so like we created a service so that we were more available. We were on AOL, which was the primary form of chatting online, right? So we were on AOL Instant Messenger, talking to people, making sure that they knew they could get the money very fast. We were like way more reputable than some of these other affiliates. And we had actually had a very cheaply made website where I literally input the data every morning from an Excel file from the casino, and it showed everyone how much they earned. So it was much more advanced than what typically was happening, which was people were just getting money on like the 30th of every month or whatever, the first of the month, and from an unknown person on the web. Like, we were actually like a couple kids playing poker, and again, as we grew, our my partners would be going to these bigger tournaments, World Series of Poker, and some of these big tournaments. And so they were meeting a lot of these other college poker players who are great players, winning tournaments, and they'd get them to sign up too. And we just give them, slightly better deals, and they knew that they knew every each other, so it was easy for us to acquire them.
Interesting. So you basically created the equivalent of kind of a scoreboard. Then that like where if I was a player, I could just come on daily or weekly or whatever and understand I'm talking about scoreboard
Yeah,
of like commissions and stuff like that.
exactly. It
Okay.
was literally adding visibility to something that was previously pretty like blind. Like people didn't know how it worked essentially.
So if you think, obviously we're going to get into ambassador and referral software and all this stuff after, but if you were to kind of think of like if there was a core one or two insights that you take away from that experience that you think can be applied like to based on where the world is going from this poker experience, like have you thought about that? What that like one or two things is when it comes to affiliate and referral networks?
Yeah, I mean, the big takeaway for me, as I grew as a person and just like thinking about professional opportunities, was that you know the the ability to the ability to connect with other people on the internet was just this massive thing that I didn't realize in the days of AOL, right? And again, you have to remember this is 20 some years ago, 25 years ago now, but that opportunity was massive, which led me to my last company, Ambassador, and we can get there if it makes sense. But I think the biggest takeaway is that your ability to connect with someone has never been easier, and so how that applies is really like what type of thing you want to connect with someone about, right? Like LinkedIn, you connect for jobs or career opportunities, but it can be sales and distribution. It can be right news and communication. Like all of that is available now instantaneously. And I mean, that's a pretty interesting concept of just how do you leverage that to help yourself in whatever you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. Like if you think about it, like you were saying, you're at the very front end of this of just no one even understood network effects and people were just coming online like the very beginning. And now we're living in this world of just, like you said, instantaneous abundance and connectivity.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get to that, but it's something that I think a lot about of like, what is the future of referral, word of mouth, affiliate type marketing look like in this AI, this AI first era that we're entering, which where you just don't even know what to believe and you just have
Right.
so much stuff coming at you.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right. So I'm fast forwarding now. 2019, you started Ambassador, which was a referral software company you built for about a decade and successfully exited. Well, we can talk a little bit about that. But can you just give us a little bit of the backstory of like what you saw in the space and why you started Ambassador?
Yeah. So to be honest, it's not as intelligent story backstory as some may seem. I mean, what happened was I was and it was 2009, right? So it was right after 2008, sort of the great financial crisis. We were both back in Michigan, didn't have a lot of opportunities in the Detroit area. We were kind of thinking about various things to start and to build, and so I actually started this company I started this home improvement website, and what happened was I was talking to the person building it for me, and I said, I really want to build an affiliate program for this, and can you build it for me? And he said, they were like, yeah, we can build it for you, and I was like, well, how much would it cost to build it as like a separate product? And they were like, it would be like the same to build it for your company or to build it separate. So I decided to build it separately, and I realized this is actually something I know, and this is probably a much better fit for me in terms of building something and creating software. So the beginning of Ambassador was really, it was as a piece of something that I was building prior to that, and I decided to shift all my focus to what became Ambassador. And the reason for it, I mean, I think again, it was something that I knew. I understood the value of referrals, and when I thought about it at the time, which again in 2008, 2009, it wasn't obvious, which I think it's much more obvious today, I realized that the true value of a referral is the person doing the referring, right? In that relationship. And so affiliate is great for like blasting stuff out and getting a wide reach and sort of a very wide reach, but sort of a very, maybe a low signal. But a peer referral or someone that you trust, which is why we became Ambassador. The name Ambassador was that hopefully is going to have, it's a lot sort of lower reach, potentially maybe lower, less volume, but much higher impact. And so that was the way that I thought about the future of commerce online, was that you are going to listen to your friends. And of course, you're already doing this in everyday life, but how do you build a product around that for companies to make that easy and to sort of increase their distribution through people that love what they're doing?
Can you drill a little bit into, you mentioned this thing of how referral programs different than affiliate, and I think affiliate gets just like a bad rap. So can you just kind of let's just dig deeper into the differences of the two?
Yeah. So I mean, in some ways they're the same, right? And I think like ultimately the way that I would define them is conceptually and as sort of like technically, it's one person or entity referring another person or entity to do something, right? Like that's online, at least. Like usually it's either, generally it's to complete a sale, but in some cases it's to register or sign up. Like it's to complete an action. So affiliate has gotten a bad rap because affiliate started in sort of like the not the most sort of professional industries, like gambling, adult industries. Like they were the ones who first did affiliates, and even like online payments, right? Like those industries have typically been pretty progressive in terms of building tools for distribution and commerce that other folks hadn't built yet. So affiliate did have a bad rap, but technically affiliate is very similar to referral. I think when I think of referral, and again, this is my own definition, you think of sort of like a peer-to-peer, right? So it's less of a website having an advertisement that says click on pokersite.com, and more of like Jeff telling Jordan to say, hey, sign up at this poker site. Like I play here, it's legit. And again, that's my definition. Technically, they're both referrals. Generally speaking, the affiliate world is much more about volume. So it's like, I mean, unfortunately, like a lot of spam has affiliate links in it. A lot of, weird advertisements, pop-ups, like a lot of those are affiliate links. Like general content, blogs, all those things are affiliate too. So affiliate's not necessarily bad. It's just a lot of times when there's a low barrier to access affiliate networks, you find sort of the bad actors doing those so they can make money as well.
Great. Can you give us a sense just about who was like Ambassador's core customer? I know you kind of moved up market over the life of the company, but just kind of break that down for us of who was really using the software.
Yeah, so I mean, we had a ton of pretty big companies that were looking for distribution, and it was really like forward-thinking marketing teams. So a lot of the companies that are household names today were using Ambassador in the early days. So like SoFi Bank, like used Ambassador for years. They gained tens of thousands of customers through referrals. And this is way before they were public. But then we had big enterprises too. We had like Verizon, we had AT&T, T-Mobile. We had Rover still uses Ambassador, right? Like the pet sitting app. If you go into their experience and you go to refer a friend, like that technology is powered by Ambassador. So HP, I mean, there were a ton of companies, many of which were very forward thinking. Some were just looking to get massive distribution. Others, again, were looking to, expand through very specific sort of like online influencers, right? Like influencer marketing is sort of an offshoot, I would say, of even referral. And it's really the same thing, right? Influencers are sort of in between, where they're sort of an entity in and of themselves. They may not be a friend, but they're someone that people feel like they can trust. And so we were seeing sort of the early days of influencer marketing as well. So companies that really could get distribution through like individual folks online.
So it's interesting. Some of these companies you're mentioning were you dealing mostly with like referral programs for physical products in the real world, or were these more digital products, digital subscriptions, or was it a real mix of both?
It was primarily digital. And the reason for it was, well, I shouldn't say that it was primarily, the transaction was digital, right? Like the key was really to measure the transaction properly. It needed to be online, right? That was the best way to manage the attribution. So it could be a physical product. It often was something delivered online, whether it was obviously software. A lot of it was software. A lot of it was, the things that were, consumer were. I mean, but even like a company like Ship6 used Ambassador, so they had a service, right? So it wasn't necessarily, but you could receive your labels online for shipping and things like that. So most of them were fulfilled online. It didn't matter necessarily if it was a digital product, but it was really the attribution that was important for us to track it. There obviously are ways to track physical, like tangible purchases, but that becomes a little more challenging, like cross-referencing databases. We can get into the details if you want, but it's a little bit more challenging for physical goods where the person is maybe in person making a purchase rather than completing a sale or a transaction online.
When you just curious, the telcos, the AT&Ts, T-Mobiles of the world, what were they using it for generally?
So AT&T actually T-Mobile actually ran a huge promotion for a couple of years. That was like you referred someone and got a big commission. I think it was a couple hundred bucks. They literally, I think we tried to do the math at one point. And it was like they might have got hundreds of millions of like recurring revenue from using Ambassador. Like, I mean, again, we were making a lot of guesses, but it was like the amount of referrals was massive. With Verizon, it was like the new service Visible was what they were trying to bring. Like they were trying to sell that to millennials. So every company had a different strategy. Again, it's typically was a marketing expense and sold into the marketing department. So, the marketing teams we talked to often had some strategy like sort of simmering in on their side of what they envisioned, and we were really the delivery system of how to get that distribution. But it's usually like sort of a lot of the planning had already taken place, especially in the big companies, right? Because that could be like months or even years in the making, and then we were there as sort of like the final piece. And sometimes we didn't even know, right? Like in some of those cases, we worked with ad agencies, and so the agencies were using us, and like I don't even know if AT&T like knew we existed, right? Or Verizon or T-Mobile. Like some of them we dealt with directly, some of them we didn't.
So how did you find it differ from, smaller startups, emerging companies? Because I know that's kind of really where you started the first several years. So they obviously don't have big, large marketing budgets and agencies that they're hiring. So did you generally see them using it differently or different strategies that were generally successful if you were to kind of abstract away, in an individual use case?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's interesting, and this is what we tried to replicate, and I don't know if there was an easy way to do it, but there's some inherent value with like referring a brand that people don't know about, right? Like it's cooler to refer a company like, I mean, I'm trying to think of like a cool company that we had. Like there's a company called Holsty that made like cool like posters, right? Like and like if you had one, it was cool, or like there were these little niche brands that were really cool, and so like you sort of had like credibility by like referring them to your network, or it wasn't seen as like, maybe not credibility, but maybe it wasn't sort of spammy, so to speak, right? And I think that's the worst connotation. So if you're referring mobile plans, like that's a little bit more weird. Like why would you be referring that on your social content? But if you're saying like, hey, I got this really cool like shirt, or I got this really cool jewelry, it almost looks different. Like you're almost like a trendsetter versus like, or like a thought leader, or someone on the cutting edge of cool new stuff versus someone who's like trying to sell out your friends, right? And again, I think one is sort of like putting referrals in the best light, one is maybe in the worst light. And so I think what we found is with the smaller, fast growing startups, like they wanted people to sort of stake their claim and say, yes, like I use this and it's cool. And like hopefully their friends see it, right? Like oftentimes, like if I see like you post something, I will probably click on it if it's about a product or service. Like I trust your opinion, like, and that's I think how a lot of people are. So, but if it's the same person posting every day about like every single thing, like you lose value, right? So I think a lot of these companies were hoping like, hey, have we made something unique and cool and interesting enough that people are going to post about it? And if they are, we're willing to give them like a slice of the action, because our other ways or means of distribution are much lower. And then you have the byproduct of, we also gain the value of like visibility or brand building, which is, a more of an intangible value that you can't measure as easily, but you're getting that as well.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. I think I was just writing a couple notes when you were talking, and it kind of, it's really this idea of kind of exclusivity, or almost like a scarcity, invite only type approach on these smaller brands is kind of what I read through the lines of what you're saying. So,
Yeah.
What did you find as, one or two kind of common mistakes that companies would make when they're setting up their referral program?
By far the biggest mistake was just overcomplicating it. Like, it sounds cool to have points and to have like refer 7 people and get one thing, but it's like, it's just complicated. And what worked the best, and also to go back and on the concept of like selling your friends. So what works the best is what we call the double-sided incentive, which is, you give something and you get something. So like both parties win. And that way it doesn't seem like you're selling your friends. Like I'm giving Jordan 5% off and then I'm getting 5% of the transaction. Like the net cost to them, or whatever the cost to them is, 10% to the business. But that way, like we're both sort of sharing in the discount, and we're both profiting from it, so to speak, or we're both gaining from it. And so that creates a scenario where you can continue to trust what I'm sending you, because you know that we're both getting something, rather than just me getting something or you saying like, what's in it for you. So I think mistake number one is complicating and overcomplicating, and mistake number two is not creating like a double-sided incentive. Like it's almost, I think, necessary at scale to do that. Otherwise, you just lose, I think, credibility of the people that are doing the sharing.
Have you so this the double-sided incentive, did you guys kind of come up with a formula or idea of, what is the right incentive level for both parties, or did it like change wildly depending on the actual program and the product and the company?
The challenge is that it was really dependent on like the margins, right? And like so like and like the way we tried to figure it out is we tried to back into it. So we'd say to companies, if they were asking us, which many of them weren't, but if they were, we'd say like, what are you paying today per customer, right? Because like, especially digital, it's pretty easy to determine like, all right, you pay per click, and then a certain percentage of those clicks turn into demos, a certain percentage of those demos turn into customers, and the average customer pays us X, right? So you get from that sort of funnel analysis, you can get a rough idea of like, we're paying $200 per customer, right? So then we'd say, okay, well, like, why don't you try 100, 50 to the 50 off, and then 50 to the person referring? It's half the price of your typical acquisition. Like, see if that makes sense. What I often told people was like, don't start at your max and bring it down. Like start a little bit lower and then raise the number, right? Because like people are price sensitive. Like people referring, you have to remember they have an opportunity cost too, right? Like if every one of my posts is only so valuable. And if I water down my posts by sending them every 5 minutes, I'm not going to get as much engagement. If I send one post every 4 months, like I might get a really high engagement. So like the companies don't realize that the individuals are also sort of like entities. Maybe they're not thinking about it that way, but you have to sort of think about all the whole chain of events in terms of how do you maximize, um, the likelihood of you getting more customers, right? So like the people have options potentially, and you got to create an incentive that makes sense. And I think companies that overcomplicate it or worry too much about like, oh, what if we're cannibalizing people that would already find us? Like, I just don't think that's a valid art. Like, I think that argument like is negligible, and people are going to always do that. Like, you might find someone who goes to your website and still clicks on your pay per click link, but because like they don't realize it. So like, I think it's kind of the cost of doing business.
What have you found more powerful? Cash incentive, social status, or emotional rewards? Have you thought about kind of those three
Yeah,
vectors?
cash for sure.
Interesting. Okay.
Um, cash is. I mean, again, I think just like cash is king, right? Like generally speaking, like cash did well. I think some companies did really well with like donations, and like we donate in your behalf. And I think like again, I think what it does is it helps remove some of the selling your friends sort of stigma. So I think that listen, I think those things work, but I think we always found that cash worked the best, right? Like I think that was what we saw, um, and I think points were the least,
Okay.
right? Like something non. I mean, if there's a very specific connection, like a donation, like that, I would say that's like quasi cash, but like points and like accumulating point, it just becomes really complicated. Like I think that's tough.
Did you find, I don't know if you've thought about this, but obviously when you think of like a higher purchase price or a high purchase price product, a high consideration purchase, where
Mm-hmm.
obviously if you have a higher ticket item, the referral fee can be much higher.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find did you do much on these higher consideration purchases, or were they more lower consideration purchase and lower price points with your referral
So
programs?
I would say generally we did more lower consideration. And I think it makes sense, right? Because ultimately, and this is, I think, the other challenge, right? Like, buying a house, you get, it's 3%, right? To a realtor potentially, but that might take 6 months. Like most of the people that are in this game, and what I mean by game is like the people like thinking about this stuff are looking for like instant gratification. So it's like how quickly from your like post, like if you tweet out a brand and a link, like how quickly does that sale take place? Because like the reality is if it takes me 6 months, like I'm not going to probably even be paying attention to it anymore. And that's not going to create a scenario where I'm in referring more people quickly. So I think generally like just sort of the nature of the beast is that these tend to be sort of like higher volume, low friction purchases that are sort of like impulse purchases, right? Um, I think a very thoughtful, sure, like I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I know there were bigger deals and bigger purchases along the way. I mean, even like a phone plan, right? Like switching your phone plan is a couple like maybe $1,000, $2,000 a year, and the odds of you switching again from a phone system is pretty low. So like you're potentially paying tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands over the life of phone plan. But it was like sort of still like sort of an instant choice or a pretty quick choice. And those tend to work much better. Again, I think the feedback loop's just a lot faster too.
So we talked a lot about it over the years as you were building the company, of how the competitive landscape got pretty crowded. And then you had obviously groups like HubSpot rolling up all types of marketing, CRM marketing tools, obviously Salesforce, the list goes on and on and on. If you kind of look back at the evolution of the industry, I mean, you really saw it just proliferate, right? Because of the growth of the internet. How did you see the referral, I guess, program industry change over that decade? Is there anything that you kind of took away from um, I don't know how people were designing it or what actually was working when all of a sudden we're living in much more of a world of abundance and options?
Yeah, the interesting thing that I used to think about quite a bit as we raise money from VCs, and so the goal is like how do you build like $100 million revenue company, right? Like that's sort of the the milestone or the North Star that you have if you're taking venture capital. And what used to make me the most worried actually was this concept of sort of like referral fatigue. And I do think that's real. And it's like, we were at the mercy. And if you think about like what's the widest net you can cast, like it's like posting on, again, this is even like pre like TikTok, right? So it's like posting on Facebook, posting on Twitter, posting on LinkedIn, blog content, Instagram, like, but at some point, like those can get filtered out. Those messages will get watered down. And so like what I was always worried about was how sustainable is this? And I think where it picked up is like influencers, I think sort of picked up the torch because they have a captive audience of people who want to know what trends, what things they are buying or what are they recommending. And so I think in hindsight, we like were purposeful and sort of stayed on the B2B side. I think moving to the influencer side would have been even smarter. Like technically our product served both of those companies, but we didn't focus on selling to companies that were looking for influencers. We really focused much more on the like business software side because that's what we knew. But I think one of the big takeaways for me is I think influencer marketing is here to stay because it just makes so much sense, right? And I think like the tools that they may use may differ, but they have a very captive, engaged audience, and it just keeps getting bigger, and so that's pretty amazing. But from a competition size, like the other thing that I also saw very clearly was that like software is a commodity, right? And like so like your competitive advantage is really like your brand and like maybe the service you provide to help build the brand recognition or like the name. Like our name Ambassador was in hindsight one of the smartest things that we did. Our URL was Get Ambassador, so it wasn't like a great URL. And actually, right before we sold the company, I finally, after like 10 years, came to an agreement to buy ambassador.com from the owner. And then because we were selling, I ended up not buying it, but I probably should have. I think it was a couple $100,000. I can't even remember how much it was. It was a lot, but I'd been asking him for years and years and years, and he never even answered my emails until maybe the last 6 months. And but the brand itself, I think, was a big deal, right? And with software, it's tough because listen, any couple, like a kid or maybe even nobody, right? Like AI can write enough code now to build an app and like get 80% of what a company does probably in a matter of like a few days or weeks or maybe even hours, and the rest is like just executing. So like that's maybe that's the hard part, but a lot of the technical stuff can be replicated pretty quickly now. And it could before with just more effort. Now it's even less effort.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I've just been the last several months been really playing around, and I don't code at all. Like I'm just starting to actually play around. Like it's just so important, and just something as simple as building a form, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of you can always use a form builder, but now you're like you can just build beautiful forms and the whole system just does custom HTML and CSS and it's everything just off of just natural language prompts. And that's such a basic example of it.
Yeah,
It's pretty wild,
it's very wild.
Did you do any, you mentioned B2B, but it was really B2B to C.
Yes, B2C, correct.
Did you do much in the B2B space?
We had a decent amount of customers B2B, and what we called those were like partner programs. So like again, it oftentimes was it was hard to find someone referring business software. Like that was rare. Like unless it was the CEO, like the incentive, the head of marketing would refer a product to another marketing company, but like it's questionable if they can like take a commission, right? So it was like for B2B, oftentimes is like managing partners, like two partners for whatever reason. So again, we tried to serve that niche, but I think there's other companies out there that are solely for partner programs, and it makes more sense for it to be like that, partner focused. So the B2B side was always tough for us because again, we really were, like you said, B2B to C in terms of like, we were selling to organizations that were looking for, it was typically they would sell to consumers, and that again, typically higher volume that way.
If you were to start from scratch today, And you talked a little bit about kind of obviously creators and influencers just having captive attention, and so they have distribution. But how would you view kind of AI or social platforms changing the way that you would build a referral program out, or even just referral software?
Well,
I
I
don't know if
think
you've thought much about it.
yeah, well, I mean, I haven't thought a ton about it, but what I do think is interesting with AI, like to me, what I think is really interesting with AI is the content side of AI. So, like, obviously, you can build easily, right? But you can also create content. And like, I mean, I even remember 5 or 6 years ago, one of our investors, one of our friends, he had a company that was like the person tweeting was like a fake person, but I didn't even realize it. It was like it was some company that was doing basically AI. And so, like, your ability to build content and create a following around a fictitious AI essentially, and then to monetize that through affiliate, I mean, that's pretty massive. So, I mean, what I think it does is it just creates more opportunities. I think the market is definitely saturated in terms of building software and tools. Like, that's, I think, a tough, I'm now onto my another company, and it's like, it's just difficult. It's like way more difficult this time in different ways. Like, the building's not harder, but like the distribution's harder, and finding customers is, I think, a lot harder. So like those things have been more challenging this time around, and I didn't expect that to be the case. And then with AI, then I think it's multiplied because companies can internally build tools with AI. They don't need to be super polished. They just need to get the job done, and they can do that with less maintenance and less overhead. And so that's really, I think, killing a lot of these little point solutions that solve like a very specific problem. If you can build it quickly and it's not expensive, and the cost of everything continues to go down online, it creates just another hurdle that you have to jump over to be successful.
Yeah, you give me a good transition to the next question, which was so you sold, what year did you sell Ambassador?
2018.
Okay, so you sold
October.
Ambassador. Who ended up buying? It was a media company, right?
The company that bought us was called West Corporation. They're now called Intrado, and it was like a legacy. They were like the Twilio before Twilio, and like the Zoom before Zoom. Like, it was the total analog connective company. Like, I think they work with like 911 dispatching, and like if you ever see I mean, I don't know if you ever have, but I had this experience once, but it was like literally when you're like physically patched into like a conference call by a phone operator. Like, that's what they do. Like, I think like law firms use them and stuff. Like, it's literally a person merging all the phone lines together or something.
Okay, and then you start. So what are you up to today? You exited out of there, and you talked about you're at your next company, and things have been much more difficult. I think it's important to talk a little bit about that, just because it just shows how the world has changed around, for the reasons you mentioned, around software and how to think about distribution.
Yeah. So sold in 2018. Literally, my sort of life turned upside down, not in a bad way, in a good way. My wife and I, we packed up, sold all our stuff, and moved to Manhattan just in time for COVID to hit. So as we escaped from Manhattan during COVID, um, we, I guess, got the band back together from Ambassador to build a company called OnBoard, which is customer onboarding software, something that we felt the pain of very acutely. Um, but it's been for sure a tough road. It wasn't my plan to build another company, but I also wasn't my plan to be stuck inside for like a year and a half in COVID. So, it was the perfect storm. And, I had great friends and investors and many people who wanted to back us. So like getting the hard challenge of getting started. And like, I also funded, and it wasn't working anything. So like a lot of things lined up to make it make sense from a time perspective. But ultimately, um, it's just a lot of things have changed with COVID. Remote work, AI, in terms of what people are valued in the organization, who's pulling more budget and choosing tools and services. So all those stuff, I think, made it more complicated than we expected. Some were foreseeable, some I think probably weren't. But nonetheless, it's definitely challenging.
And you guys, this is just more of just for a lot of the folks that are following us in the early days are mostly people building companies, and that could be both technical and non-technical founders. focus on this idea of decentralizing the real economy. And, I think you guys went through Y Combinator, right? For the last,
We did.
for
Yeah.
OnBoard. So can you just, give from based upon your experience, I know the program changed a lot over the years, but just like when other founders are looking at, hey, should I be a part of an accelerator program or not? Like how to just think about that? Because I think that's just a helpful perspective from people our age who have gone through the bumps and bruises, the good and bad of these types of things. So
For sure. So I went through Techstars in 2011 with Ambassador, and then YC in 2022. So 11 years apart. And the reason why, so my feedback is to the average person, you should absolutely go to an accelerator where you can get in. And I should say at least like a top 4 or 5 ones. So like YC, Techstars, and maybe there are a couple other, and there's some new ones that are like really even, I think maybe even more exclusive than some of those. But and the reason is not maybe not obvious, but I think it's incredibly important. So one is you're going to learn a ton of shit that you'll never learn anywhere else. Oftentimes that's really like sort of like the inside baseball, the stuff that no one will tell you because it's taboo, right? Like to talk shit about investors or to say like, really, you should do this, like, or this investor is gonna not a good partner. Like no one's gonna tell you that stuff, right? There's like a social incentive to like basically talk good about everybody in a community. But the reality is like that's not gonna help you like individually in many cases. And so you learn that stuff from these places like Techstars and YC where they actually have leverage against sort of like the average investor, and you can make sure that you're not getting shitty terms that can really handcuff you for the future. So like those things alone could save your business, right? Another less obvious thing though is like really like it just helps build your confidence. It helps validate what you're doing. It's a lonely thing to start a company, and oftentimes most people around you have no idea what you're doing, or think you don't even have a real job. It's now become a little bit more like cool, but back 10 years ago, it was like very weird to have like an internet business. And so I think like the validation just like mentally for yourself is like pretty valuable, and like growing yourself and growing confidence and being able to, you know, complete something that's try to achieve something that's pretty freaking hard. So for those reasons, I think it's a no-brainer. I think it's a little bit less of a no-brainer if you're super skilled or you've done this before or you already have a team in place and you have a lot of the experience. Like maybe you worked as a VC or maybe you worked as a COO or even maybe you founded a company. Like I think that then it's less obvious to do it in those cases. But I think for the average, especially first-time founder, like it's worth the trade-off of some equity for probably a much bigger gain down the road.
One of the things I have seen a lot in my own experience in companies I've invested in, and I want to know to get your experience on this, which is, when you're building something new, getting early customers or feedback is oftentimes the hardest thing to do. Mm-hmm. Especially, when you have to be shipping shitty product and non-polished product. One of the things I always think about the network that some of these accelerators and programs create is like, and why I believe actually Silicon Valley is one of the reasons it's so powerful. Obviously, it attracts the talent and the capital, but it is that supportive ecosystem of just trying product and testing product and giving feedback. Did you find that to be an advantage for you guys? Did you receive that type of experience when going through both Techstars and Y Combinator?
Yeah, I mean, I think what it does is like they both put you. Well, Techstars is very mentor heavy, so it puts you in front of a lot of people, and those people are willing to help you. And so, like as you mentioned, and I think is very true for me spending, probably a few months of my life in the Valley. You see the serendipitous outcomes, but also like the people, like someone's willingness to help. Like it's different there than in other places. It's I used to gripe like it's not like that in Detroit, right? Like it's a little bit, everyone's a little bit more like close to the vest, and like you're not as likely to help each other out for whatever reason. And it plays a huge part, like to get your early customers and your early evangelists, ambassadors, right? If you want to call them that, like that's huge. And like, so for ambassador, even anecdotally, this is a crazy story, but like one of the one of the guys, one of the founders in Techstars saw someone at a conference and told them about ambassador, and that person was the head of or one of the people at the agency who repped T-Mobile. So like we got T-Mobile from a referral from a co-founder at Techstars, and like that literally changed the trajectory of our company, because we not only was it very successful and they paid us a lot of money, it was minuscule the amount of money they paid us compared to how like valuable like that logo was to show in every product demo for like several years after that, because we're like, go on this website and like see ambassadors powering this. So like we're good enough for T-Mobile, like we're good enough for you. And that was like, I mean, it changed the trajectory of our company because of that. So that allowed us to get Verizon and, I think all these other big brands, like they were the first big brand and it was successful, and it was a huge for us.
You bring up something I think a lot about, and we've talked a lot over the years of just the experience. I spent a couple of years in San Francisco and then coming back to Detroit, and that mindset difference. And it's interesting. The older that I've gotten, the more that I've read, the more that I experience, and obviously I spend a fair amount of time over in Europe now as well. And what I boiled it down to, man, is it's really about being in an environment that's an environment of abundance versus an environment around scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, if I were to like characterize it, Silicon Valley, San Francisco is the epicenter of the world of abundance.
Yep.
Like mindset.
Yeah.
And then, I would kind of then Detroit, I would go down a few rungs. And then you come over and have experience in Europe and you're like, man, this is a whole different world around scarcity. Right. Like there's this story that I had here. It was fascinating. So I invested in a very early stage company here in France, actually. And I came across another biotech related business, and it really intrigued me. And I asked him, do you mind? Because I saw he was connected to the other founder. I'm like, do you mind connecting me? I'd be interested in learning more what they're building, because it's relevant for what I'm looking at. And so he connected me, and I had a call with the founder, and the woman was like, I can't believe, his name's Rafiq. Rafiq connected me with one of his investors. And I was like, what? And they were telling me that it's rare that everyone holds their investors like close to their chest. Like the founders don't like share who their investors are.
Wow.
And I was like, oh man, this is a different world. And then this is the best. You'll appreciate this. And then I've had multiple instances. I won't go into the details. It's not relevant. But where investors basically ask founders for like referral fees and money for like introducing them to like a customer or whatever. Like I get it.
Yeah.
And, but it's like, man, I mean, an early stage investor, like you should be backing like the problem they're trying to solve in the misery that someone's going to go through along the journey, of starting something. But
it's brutal. There's a lot of weird stuff out there. And it's sad. Like I see that people pitching me and like people pitching brands, and it's a good thing. Just if you do have early stage folks watching, like if you can't fucking fundraise for yourself, like you need to just close up shop. Like,
totally.
Like there's no one's going to be able to fundraise for you. And I mean, like if you get big enough, like yeah, maybe you have a CFO fundraise, but like your early rounds, like you need to do it yourself. And if you can't, it's probably a good signal to like look in the mirror and like figure out like what you can do better or what feedback you can get from those folks and like take it to heart. So it's hard. Fundraising's hard, but like you're the best person to do it if you're starting a company. Like it's you need to do that yourself.
No, totally. And you realize the more that you're around this, there's no shortage of capital. People always think there's a shortage of capital. It's like, it's the complete opposite. There is such an abundance of capital that's looking to be placed on interesting ideas. And so, yeah, it's like this, you should have a reflection. Or if you wholeheartedly believe in your approach, just keep going. You just keep talking to more people,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like you said, it's not the shortage of capital. It's probably the shortage of connections in your personal network. So figure out a way to listen, it's never been easier than it is today to like connect with people that are like typically outside your reach. And even as like a crazy small anecdote, when I was in Techstars, like one night, I think at 2 a.m, I like cold emailed Mark Cuban and he wrote me back like 10 minutes later. And like from there, we got their framework of a deal. He ended up not investing, and then like we sort of backed out because of the terms. But like he, we emailed back and forth like 5 times over at like between 2 and 3 in the morning on like a random day, and like people are accessible. Like you have to just try. And like now you can get a hold. Like now probably all those people are easier to get a hold of, but it's doable, right? It can be done.
Sure. All right. So I got a few more questions for you, like kind of a little bit more for on the closing side. So can you give me a little bit more, maybe rapid fire knowledge sharing here? So can you give me one name of anyone that comes to your mind that's had a big influence on you? It could be both professionally or personally that other people should know about, or that you just find their stuff's really interesting.
Should I say you?
I mean, obviously, I knew you were going to say that.
But it's true. So like again, I'll just say it for the. I'll give a kind of a longer answer here, but like
Sure.
no. So we reconnected. You came back from San Francisco, and like the mindset that you had was different than anything else that I'd seen, and so I thought like the value of networking and community building was really awesome, and like I had the entrepreneurial spirit, I would say, but not like I think like the tools to like actually execute. And so it was fun. Like we got together and became really good friends over a short period of time. I don't know, maybe like what 2007, eight
Yeah, right during the
period.
financial crisis. Bought our first
And
investment property together.
yeah, that's right. We bought an investment property that I'm sure you've probably 5x, and I think I sold my share to you for like 10 grand, so I could pay for ambassador, but it was worth it. 10 grand profit. And then I think maybe you quit claimed me off the mortgage or something. But no, like honestly, you made a huge impact on me for all that stuff, and I mean I think probably even for me to like go through that stuff. So I mean I think about that a lot because it was a pretty profound time where like there wasn't a lot of hope in Detroit at the time, and we had a lot of cool ideas, and like not all of them panned out, but like I think they would have all been pretty massive. We just didn't have like we couldn't execute on all of them, but we had some pretty cool. We could have been like like had a Detroit empire, property empire potentially had we done things a little bit differently, but it was a lot of fun.
No, I appreciate that. I think, and I don't, this is kind of the fun part for me of the going direct and now kind of coming out a little bit more publicly about what I've done and what I'm doing and what I care about and who I am. But no, man, I think first of all, I appreciate that. And it goes both ways. I mean, we were back in Detroit originally. On my side, it was more for some personal reasons originally. But yeah, when you talk about doom and gloom, Detroit in 07, 08, and I think what just even our relationship taught me is being around other entrepreneurial minded folks that have like a positive mindset that you also just have fun with. And then you obviously have trust, and we have a long-standing relationship, so that or just we've known each other for a while, and how important that is. And I think that it's something I think about a lot because we've had this conversation because you did Ambassador by yourself.
Yeah.
When I started Town Partners and all the property development work and property investment work in Detroit, I had a partner, and I remember talking about it a lot. Where you were like, I don't know if I would ever start a company again by myself because it just wasn't that fun.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, I appreciate that, and it does go a long way. You realize it, like most people out there are complaining about small things. They're not generally positive people, and you get so much energy in from talking to other people who want to like change things and do things and create things. For me, it's art. It's not like business. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Agree.
Cool. Last podcast you've listened to it's noteworthy.
I listened to, I forgot the name of it, but the Jensen Wong interview. I can't remember. It's the two guys. I can't remember the name of it. It was awesome. He was just like, it was like an hour and a half or 2 hours, and I was just like mesmerized. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, but no, actually, the last one I listened to was yours. Probably, I think after that, but around the same time, I listened to yours with Packy also.
Cool. Yeah, Packy's great. Who else should I have a conversation with going direct?
Man, shoot, I don't know.
Come back to it.
Yeah, come back to it.
How can people reach you?
Twitter. You can email me. But yeah, LinkedIn or Twitter, probably the best. Jeff Epstein, you see my name here, you can't miss it. So there's a handful of us unlucky folks. But yeah, if anyone wants to connect, like, just tell me you heard me on here, and I'll connect.
Cool. And we'll put it in the show notes. All right, my man. I appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah, this was fun. I appreciate you.
All right, man.
See ya.
See ya.